You have a sense of your reputation because you walked around and you inquired with people, and you're now in a conversation that is about your core values, okay? And so all of that is who you are. Core values trump everything. Dr. King had a stereotype. He was a black man in a white, trying to impact a white culture. He was trying to get something done. He started the process. He was just a guy, who was a Baptist preacher, and he was trying to get something done with that, and it didn't have a whole lot of traction. As he would talk about it, he, at one point, back in about 1957-58, this is just for you about I Have a Dream, okay? If you saw or if you look at that particular speech, I Have a Dream, that was the 154th time he had given that speech. Okay, he didn't make it up for that occasion. 4 years before that, Dr. King did a sermon in his little Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, and in the sermon, there were maybe 28, 30 people in the church that evening, and he did what he called the dream sermon. And it was the germ of I Have a Dream. And he got to the end of the sermon that day, and he was standing by the door like a good Baptist preacher, shaking people's hands as they were walking out of the congregation, and they were not leaving. They were lit up, and they were sticking around. They wanted to talk. And after about 45 minutes, Dr. King said, y'all need to go home and be with your families, because he wanted to go home and be with his family. And somebody said, Dr. King, will you do that speech again on Sunday? And he, who was building his congregation at the time, said, I will if you'll bring people. So that Sunday, the church was just, they're hanging from the rafters. They got this live wire choir. Everybody's turned on, they're lit up. Dr. King is going to do the dream sermon. He went home and rewrote the sermon. And he underlined what he wanted to underline. He got the thing together and he gave the speech. There was someone in the church that heard him who actually had something to say about maneuvering this man around. And they took him and they put him on something called the Chitlin Circuit. And he went around from church to church to church to church in the South giving that speech. And as he did it, he would just keep refining his speech and refining his speech. He was arrested 54 times. He was put in jail 54 times. Now, this man had a stereotype. He was a black man in the South. And there's a stereotype, I don't know if you've read the papers, but there is actually a stereotype attached to that, okay? Especially in 1957, 58, 59. In addition, he had a reputation. Anybody know what Dr. King's reputation was? He was a troublemaker. He was a troublemaker, so he keeps getting arrested. So he shows up, and before he even shows up, the fire hoses are out, the dogs are out, and he's going to get arrested. You got that? Doesn't even have to open his mouth. So he's got that reputation. But he stood up in front of 450,000 people who were his constituency. This was like preaching to the choir, okay, at the Lincoln Memorial one day. The difference was there were 3 networks there, and 33 million people were watching in their homes on television. This amazing event of this guy who had a reputation. People tuned in out of curiosity. My family was one of those. I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching Dr. King's speech. And a few minutes into the speech, I am so moved, I am out of my chair and I'm standing up and I'm in tears because I'm going, that's my future. This is what this country is about. What did he say? He said, let's just do the Constitution. Let's just do the Constitution. There were a lot of people saying scary stuff in those days. Dr. King said, let's just do the Constitution. That made sense. Let's do the Constitution. His core values, what were some of his core values? What was one of his core values?
No discrimination, total.
Yeah, equality. You got that? That was kind of like the underlying of that. Also, was it not peace? It was. He won the Nobel, what do you call it, prize? Peace Prize. Yeah. He really won it. So his values trumped everything. Now, He had 450,000 people in front of him. You would think that was something significant. Not significant. Not enough to move things. 33 million people watching, that changed the world. Okay? These people were the choir. He became what they call in country music a crossover hit. He actually got into the white audience, and in mass, white people started saying, that's the deal. We're going to do that one now. We're going to get lined up on that one now. And life changed, and history changed. And 45 years later, my granddaughter, in her class, learned something about Dr. Martin Luther King and comes home and she tells her grandfather, and he's crying because he knows her grandchildren are taken care of. That's the power of core values. How you measure your power as a leader is how many generations out your word has power. That's thousands of generations, maybe millions of generations away from Dr. King, who died in 1969. The power of his word will probably live, I don't know, till the next ice age. Wouldn't you say? Yeah, something like that.